Hello, hello, courageous followers. How is everybody today? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hope everybody had a happy holiday this past week. We're super excited about our topic today. I think it's going to bring up a lot of cool stuff. Kelly, you're going to have so much input on this topic, I feel like. I just felt it. Let's bring in Miss Leanna. So I'm happy you're here. Christina, happy you're here. Hi, everybody. Let's bring in my girls. Let's bring in my girls. Hi.
Good morning, Lovey.
Good morning.
Again. I feel like we always act like surprised to see each other. And with April, meanwhile, we've already connected this morning virtually.
Your hair looks so amazing.
Oh my God. Like, I haven't seen you in like for days. Bullshit.
Let's check. She is Miss
Yay, yay.
April.
Yay, 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 yay. Hope everybody had a beautiful Thanksgiving weekend.
Yay! This was a Monday. I think this was the first time all three of us got in like that.
Oh, we're off to a running start.
Hello, Miss April.
Morning.
We were just giggling. I redid Leanna, your hair looks beautiful because we were saying we do see each other and then we see each other again for life.
And then we act surprised, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were going to be here.
Good morning. Good morning. Some new people. Good morning.
Hi, Matt. Jennifer, my beautiful friend. So I'm going to need to lean on you, honey, soon for Weight Watchers because I get to be more responsible around my choices.
How is everybody this fine Monday? It is like literally the winter wonderland out here. It's all snuggly today.
You have some slight feedback, my love.
Yeah, I think I don't know if there's like some background noise that ends up cutting off your audio and your buffering.
Is that better? No.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Do you hear that, April? There's a lot of like white static noise.
I don't know what's happening.
Is there a machine running in your house? That's better.
So we were talking today about just cleaning out clutter in our lives. And we thought it would be like a really cool topic. And, you know, we kind of just want to go into what you even think of when you think of clutter. Is that something that overwhelms you in life? Is it something that you're good at clearing out? Do you have the tools to do that in your life? How does it show up for you? Do you take on other people's clutter? So I just wanted to lead off with that to share with everybody what we were talking about. And we thought it was a really cool topic, especially for new seasons, new time of year, things like that, the new year up, right? I don't believe in resolutions, but we'll talk about that another time. So what do you guys think when you hear the word clutter? Or, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
For me, clutter is stuff that takes up space that you just takes up space. And within that could be some things that you really enjoy and then some things that are just stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know like there's the external clutter, the material stuff.
Right.
And then there's like the internal clutter too. So I love the metaphor in all of that. How about you?
Right. And it's funny because And we've been talking about duality. April's brought that word up a little bit, and I think we think that it's different. But I find a lot of times when you just look at it in general, it's very much the same, whether it's internal or external. It
Mm-hmm.
show up very similarly. So, like, do you save everything, and and why? Because a lot of people like to save memories and things like that. Is it overwhelming you though, or is it things that bring you joy to look at in your space? Things like that. And I was sharing with you in April. I just want to bring her in. Let's see. I was sharing with you in April before how I hosted Thanksgiving. There she is. Better. You're good. You can't hear anything. So I was sharing with them earlier how for I hosted Thanksgiving, and I really just with that started cleaning up spaces and just getting rid of stuff. And I was thinking of like putting all this stuff out. I actually shared it with one of our shares this week, just how simple my setup was, and I just kept going. Like I kept cleaning out closets, and I was shocked because I was sharing with you guys. I consider myself pretty minimalistic with my like stuff, and I got rid of 3 huge bags of like shit. um, Karen says, for me, it's when there's a lot going on at once, whether it's items, thoughts, or energies. Karen, we didn't really touch on that brain clutter. So thank you. Yeah, what about for you guys?
I feel like I've not really been part of the conversation because it took forever for me to actually join because I was watching you guys and I was like, even like see that I requested to come join. So I'm kind of out of, to be honest.
Yeah. So just what does clutter mean to you? What do you think of when you think of that word?
Ugh. Uh, well, there's so, like Karen just said, there's so many types of clutter, and I think all three of us have really, shown, we say that here a lot that we do, be the work. We definitely be the work. And so, clutter for me has been something I've avoided. Like there's all these boxes of things for me to go through, and some of it's not even been open in 20 years. So like throw the whole box away, right? Like, but then there's that mental game that you play with you, and it's like, but you haven't you haven't even touched it in 20 years. So a lot of like physically going through some of those things, um and I think it has to do with like really being responsible, you know because you can always be like, I'll do that tomorrow. Oh, yeah, tomorrow. you know so clutter to me, I think, is actually beautiful and necessary because it allows some of that stuff that's kind of stuck to kind of start to move, which then creates a little bit of chaos. And so we don't like the chaos, I think, a lot of the time because it's not normal or it doesn't feel the same as what we're used to feeling. And so it brings up a lot of things for people. But on the other side of that is some really powerful healing and lessons.
Mhm.
So,
It's so funny because I love that you said chaos. Like just as a visual, when I start to purge, so like say I'm doing a closet, it looks crazy at first. Like there's just stuff everywhere. And I was thinking, like, what if it was just there all the time and I was like physically looking at it? Like then I would probably do it sooner, right? Because I would want to be like out of that kind of like chaotic feeling. But also we get to lean into it sometimes too, because that's what you get to move through, right? To remove it.
I feel like I've also heard people say it, and more recently, there was an experience I had with somebody who was committed to meditating, yet found that quiet, still space to be chaotic. And so I feel like there are people out there who really connect with the chaos. The reason why might be different, for why they're actually doing it, but there are some people who, when things are peaceful and simple, that's chaos for them, which is just so interesting for me.
Mhm.
And again, it might just be to avoidance, not having to deal with certain things, or it's the mirror or whatever it is. But for some people, at least they think that it works for them. Whether it does or not, I don't know. But
I actually want you to share that idea more and elaborate on it for like us to all understand.
there's some people who get so caught up in living in that space of chaos, other people's stuff, drama, overcommitting, like all of these things. And for them to step back from that and simplify feels exactly the opposite way for them, where we might choose to simplify and free up space and go within. And then I think other people thrive on the chaos
Oh yeah.
because it's what they know. It's a distraction.
Right.
It makes them feel certain ways. But I just find that interesting that it can feel like chaos can feel so calming for some. Whereas, on the other side of that, there's some of us who feel like the chaos does not support us. And, taking those things away make us feel better. Whereas the idea of that on the other side for other people doesn't feel the same way.
Right.
I can completely relate to that. I lovely mother that I have is definitely living in me. She's a working person, and I have taken on that role very well, and up until now. And I think that when you have that busyness, that let's just keep going, that creates that chaos, and it doesn't leave time for that stillness. I think that's why, I talk a lot about that poetic pause on here a lot, because that's something I really value now that I'm evolving and growing in my own stuff, right? We all have our stuff. But that chaos really was like, it kept me going, because if I stopped and sat in that silence, then it would then become chaotic for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, because when April was talking prior to, is it possible that because when you lean back and take those pauses, it actually creates a space, which is so foreign, you
Yeah.
know? And then with that, I think even like the stuff that you're getting rid of, um, there's a fear of scarcity, like that space is something lost, right? Like because you're not filling it constantly, something's lost. So like, why are we so fearful to live in space, really?
Mm.
I wanna Karen shared, yes, for some space for self means exposure, and that is scary for many. Oh, I like that word, exposure. Um,
Mm.
and that is scary for many. I love how you guys help people know it's okay and it doesn't have to be scary.
Well, and I think too, like it's okay if it is scary, but for most people, I always like to acknowledge that they've done scary things before or that they've done hard things before. And so even though it may look that way, it just looks that way. And you've done scary things before, and so you have it in you to do scary things again.
Mhm.
I tell people a lot of the time, you're already feeling miserable. So why not do something new or shift something and take that one step towards kind of getting through that clutter that's in your brain or emotion that you're feeling, because you're already feeling a certain way, so why not do something while you're in it, when you're feeling that? Because a lot of the time that whole, we talk about stuck all the time, they feel stuck, but yet they're comfortable in that chaos or that feeling. And so there's nothing being done. But why not? You know, you're already feeling that way. Why not take one action step?
Mm. And you were saying before, Cynthia, and I had something that came to me and then it went away. Like in going through clutter, right? Physical clutter, even, you know, there's been instances where my father and mother-in-law have passed from this earthly space and body, but going through their things, you end up purging a lot of it, right? Without even really going through it, which makes me feel a little bad because it's like, oh my God, like this must have meant something to them. But at the same time, like once our time here like this is gone, like it's just stuff. It's just stuff. And somebody's going to go through it and just be like, garbage, get rid of it, purge, purge, you know? So it's just, I think of that too sometimes, like you said, with the box that you haven't opened in 20 years. And it's like, yeah, but let me just see what's in it before I just throw the box away. One day, if you never open the box, somebody's just going to throw the box away
Right.
with no attachment to what's inside of it. Like,
There's that word.
I was like, and with that.
Well, and even other people's clutter too, we were talking about before we came on, that I think gets to be really important.
And talking about other people's clutter, so we always, share our lives have changed, the three of us, dramatically since, in the past 2 years and things like that. But it's funny because I wrote down the words, I think was when April was speaking, avoidance feeds your story. So like we've been having a lot of conversations in my household, and we've gone back to just do it. We used to say that a lot in the house, like just do it, instead of like waiting or like looking for somebody else to fill something or like anything. It could be anything. Like I know people are really good. I get super manipulative because I'm home, like in my own stuff, where like I'm waiting for someone to like start the laundry, so that I can have a story around how I'm not supported, like instead of just having a conversation and like moving forward and just getting it done, like what is that? The avoidance only feeds like some kind of bullshit in our brain, I feel like that can be serving, but we're talking about, unserving stories, I think, with regard to this.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I think be serving and non-serving, though, honestly, because sometimes avoiding something in that moment is serving you, so you do have that poetic pause, right? So it's that fine line in that dance that we play, but I do agree that most of the time what we're talking about now is stuff that's not serving us for sure. And I think that's where it gets a little confusing, because we do kind of walk that fine line sometimes to where something that's serving somebody else is absolutely not serving another. And we get to be brave in that as well, And I think that leads to what Leanna was just talking about, is taking on other people's crap, their clutter. We think that we can be super fixers up until now. That was definitely identity that I prided myself on. And so talking about taking on other people's crap is definitely something I no longer want to be an expert in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like we've been having these conversations a little bit in the past couple weeks. And I think I've also kind of been experiencing a breakthrough around that, where I don't have to come to the rescue. I don't have to fix anything, especially when nobody's asking me to. Especially when nobody's asking me to. But it's a really it's a new concept, but it's interesting. It's interesting to feel the feeling of wanting to lean into it, into the chaos and into somebody else's clutter, because that's just what you're conditioned. But then taking that poetic pause to say, like, I feel like there's two inquiries that we can always go to. It's, what is this bringing up for me? Or what is this bringing up for you? And I feel like I've always I'm just starting to play with the idea of like, well, what does this bring up for you? Before I assume that I take it all on, and try to figure it out and fix it. And like, it's felt empowering a little to just kind of, and it's shifted some conversations. And I think that it gets to start to just open up some stuff. And I'm curious to see where this breakthrough will lead.
I love that. I also adopted Wayne Dwyer says in a lot of his books, how can I help? Instead of being like, oh, well, I see that did, and I go into this long, drawn out, beautiful thing that they should just be able to use very simply and fix their whole entire life because I see it. No, how can I help you? How can I support you? Because then it literally puts it back on them. And if they're going to say nothing, oh, okay, well, I'll be here supporting you.
Mm.
How can I help? It's a very simple thing to be able to be like, I see you struggling. How can I help you? And it takes away your own attachment to what somebody else's story is. It's pretty powerful. I've been using it a lot lately.
Mm. And see, it's interesting because I feel like for me on the other side of that, I get to stop asking how I can help. And maybe just wait for it because I think that for now would serve me for now as I adjust. Because for me, if I say how can I help and they don't respond, then I still try to figure out, which is on me, how I can help, what I can do, how I can support. Or on the other side of that too, oh, am I not good enough for you, to help support you? Like, so I think I'm not as evolved yet. Yeah, so I think like that language for me, I think I have to like get past one other or two other things before I can get into a space where I really mean that and I'm not attached to the outcome of it.
I love you.
Huh?
I love you for that. Go ahead, April, because I'm going to go in on this one.
I can feel you chomping at the one, awesome that you can recognize that in yourself. Two, this isn't a cookie cutter world, right? So what works for one person is not going to work for another. And that's where I think we get to really become really committed in self to not become that fixer and taking other people's clutter on because it's so much more prettier than our clutter, right? Because the advantage is like, let's look at their clutter because mine looks not so great. Yeah.
That's so true. And like April, with that, can we like stop like worrying about what works for everybody else and just worry about like, I feel like we impose so much on each other, I see it just in the world, politically, whatever it is, like nobody has to be right. Nobody has to do things the same way, like I just have to like constantly drive that home in my conversations because it's something that we've been acknowledging, and one thing I wrote was like leaning back within conversations or doing things will always provide a freedom, create a certain freedom. But I want to go in with Leanna's permission on the how can I help? Because you actually shared out loud all of your stories around it. So that thank you for that.
You're welcome, because I totally intentionally did that.
I was like, oh, awesome. Let's go in on this.
Oh, no, I didn't even. Oh, boy. Here we
go. So what I hear in that, too, and this is all attachment, I hear outcome attachment to outcomes in your conversation with yourself. And just one thing that I would offer for people that are like you, I'm the same, too. We're all little bits of the same shit. We just handle it the different way, perceive it a different way, whatever. But I think that would be an awesome challenge for you to ask somebody how you can help them and then leave that and not attached to whatever they offer you, right? Because actually you're presenting it as not taking on somebody's clutter, but for me, hearing it in a way you are, because you're thinking of their outcome, but that has nothing
Mm,
to do with you. Whatever their outcome is that they offer back to you is beyond you.
right, right.
And that was so powerful for me to hear you say. So thank you. And I was like, whoa, there's a lot like in there, you know?
Yeah. I get to try that on for sure.
Yeah, because what a cool experience when we get to the point where we're not looking for validation or receiving anything back and just simply being like a source for someone.
Mm.
It's full
And you
acceptance.
know, yeah. And you know my conversations around value and worth. So
But
yeah.
that's, you aren't alone. You aren't alone, just even in the people that are on this live right now. Like that's like an ebb and flow of life that you're constantly going to be bumping up against. Especially when we're seeking validation.
Yeah, and it's cool that everyone's offering different things because it shows up so much, like the attachment to other people's like stuff. You know, I bet we've seen it even in our families this past week, you know, where you just observe and you kind of like step back. You know, you don't say certain things, you know. We talk a lot about, you know, being quiet sometimes. And that could mean in a conversation or just within ourselves for a moment or whatever that looks like. Because I feel like that's when you allow the space for some of the shifts to be created.
Well, and I want to share because I think it would make sense here, and it was part of the conversation that we had before we got on that it's a practice, right? And there's the moments where it just goes right over your head and you missed it, missed the opportunity, no big deal. And then there's moments where if you take that poetic pause, all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, like okay. And I had that, I think, and so that it's always a work in progress, and it's a practice, and it's a muscle. The mind is a muscle, and we get to strengthen it and work it out, you know, more than anything. And then I'm starting to, and in talking about taking on other people's clutter, I'm beginning to observe ways that I can release taking on, or you know, avoid taking on people's clutter. And I was having a conversation with my husband the other night. We went out, celebrated our anniversary, had a beautiful night, driving home, and we started talking about Christmas gifts. And there's something that I've mentioned for years. We talked more directly about it and more clearly about it this year. Are you sure you want that? Are you going to use it? You know, because I've gotten you. It was about this. It was about the damn bike rack. You know, years ago you wanted a bike rack, and I got you a bike rack, and then you never used it. And like, you know, and I work hard, and you know, I just, you know, if I'm going to get you something, I want to know that you're going to use it. And I'm just kind of, and you know, and I'm half listening because I have like my own, you know, conversations coming in, like my interruptions and my rebuttals, and I'm just like, okay, just listen. And for like the first, as I'm practicing this, I was kind of like, I wanted to see what it was bringing up for me, but then I was kind of like, well, wait, but like that's like what is that about for you that there has to be these terms and conditions about how gifts are received? And you know, and if it just comes from a place of here is a gift, like why are you so attached with the fact that whether it's used or not? And so it was just interesting, but I found myself also going into a place where I was considering letting it impact the night and the tone, the overall tone of the night. And so I chose to just kind of sit in my own space with it. And then the following day, I leaned back. I didn't bring it up again. I was just gonna give it some space. I took myself out for the day. And then I kind of just like forgot about it and realized it wasn't really that big of a deal. And whatever that is about for him, that it's about for him. And so I'm consciously choosing as best I can to not take on other people's clutter. And I released my attachment to what that conversation could have looked like, what it could have meant, how I felt as a result. You know, and I just was kind of like, no, I'm just going to take the moment here and like regroup. And this doesn't need to be a chaotic conversation and experience. Like, But yeah, the taking on other people's clutter gets to be, I think, like a really powerful practice and something that I get to be very intentional about.
How did you feel like moving through that? Like how did you feel when you took a step back, and how did you feel after? And is that different than you would normally, do?
Um, it felt uncomfortable because now there's a conference, there's a conference, there's unaligned conversation. And so for me, that automatically makes me uncomfortable, and the fixer in me wants to just be like, forget it, sweep it under the rug, up until now. And so I chose to just be quiet because I didn't have anything serving to say. I was kind of processing. Um, and even the next morning, I still energetically kind of felt like I didn't love that. That didn't make me feel good. Like I already have challenges receiving, and now you're putting all this pressure on how I have to receive your gift that I've asked you to give me. Like, but I spent some time with myself. I went out for the day. I went to lunch by myself, and I put on some Christmas music. Like I just was like, what's important right now? Like what can I feel good about? Is this really necessary to have a conversation around this, or do I get to just kind of check in on him and have these little mini like call outs that if he chooses to go in on, great, like let's have that conversation and let's talk with each other and communicate. But afterward, like I felt I didn't need to go back to it, which is important for me too, to like just let it rest because it really wasn't that big of a deal. And it felt good to release that pressure of having to fix this conversation, revisit it, resolve it, outcome, all that type of stuff. It felt really good. I could have just said it felt really good.
That was necessary. And I think, like, I love the word freedom, because when you do offer yourself a space to work through all of those things and detach, there is a sense of freedom. And I think when you're working through at first, and you guys share whatever, you have off of this, but I think when we're working through at first, the space almost feels not like freedom. It's just free, like open. And then eventually you're like, okay, I'm getting this. I'm getting this like little flow of this thing. And I wrote down, I'm curious what you guys think about this question, but I wrote clutter, another way to dim our own lights and not be fully seen.
It could be a mask for sure. It's a story for some.
Like,
And
do you think
when you
that like dim our lights, in a way by taking
mm-hmm,
off everybody else's? Because you're kind of,
mm-hmm.
you know, pushing focus onto something else to not go
Yeah,
self.
it's not self first. And when you
Yeah,
were talking about that space, I just want to add one, like some people like so you have this space that you're kind of leaning back and creating, like, but that can feel unsafe. That space at first for people can feel not like a safe space. So I just want to acknowledge that, and that by the more you lean into it, that the idea would be that it does become a safer and a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, April.
no, you're fine. I lost what I was going to say, but what you shared brought me to a actually very beautiful visual of what that is really, like the horse and the buggies and the rutted road. It's not great, but it's still, very a lot easier than going on like the field where you have to create a new road. The horse and buggy just is going along. It's bumpy. It's not fun. It hurts. But then you're like, you know what? I'm done with this horrible path. I'm going to create this path. Well, it takes work, and it takes creating the new road, right? It takes having that practice. And when we are practicing, we're actively creating that new pathway. But when we veer back and we get comfortable, the horse and buggy just automatically goes back to the rutted road. Yeah, it's uncomfortable and it's bumpy, but it's easier because it's familiar, right? And so I think that gets to be shared because it's a great visual to understand that, you know, that road sucks, but I know that road, you know. I don't know the new way because it's foreign to me. And it's going to take going through a whole lot of emotional turmoil and clutter and chaos to be able to get on that new path that probably will be a lot less resistant, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That is a really good visual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Get used to the bumps. We want to carry them, try them on, wear them. You know, like we all nail each other all the time, like within our stories, like don't wear it, you know, don't wear it too much, you know, like it's great that it's a story, but don't wear it too much. You get to just play with it a little, you know.
I'm wondering too with that visual if there is the belief that if you go over the bumpy road enough, eventually it'll smooth out a little bit. And and are some people, do they feel safe in that too? In that, well, I just keep doing it because eventually it won't feel as bumpy. I'll be used to the bumps.
So for me, I would offer that as almost desensitizing yourself in a way.
Mm.
Done that in my life before. You know, sometimes I necessarily had to, and other times I was like, but then you get to a space too where you're like, again, the wearing versus like kind of just playing with it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I can relate to that for sure.
And I think the idea of the baggage is coming up too, that we were talking about earlier, and all the bags that we carry and the baggage that we carry, just as another visual. And how you said, you know, you saw a woman who literally was just carrying bag upon bag upon bag upon bag, and how symbolic that is of all the baggage that we carry.
And physical weight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I literally in my marriage jumped off my rutted road and jumped into his buggy and completely stopped cultivating any of my road. If we want to
Mm.
that analogy, because and I think this is definitely a female thing that we get to look at. You know, we stop living life for us because we want to serve our man, you know. I don't know what that is that happens. And I am definitely not the same person I was when I was married, for sure. But I just jumped ship. I abandoned my road completely until I didn't, you know. And I think that gets to be looked at too. It's like just because you jumped off your road and joined somebody else's and completely are ignoring your needs, your wants, your desires as a human being and as a spiritual soul, doesn't mean that you can't jump back in and start going in your own life and direction and then shift that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something to serving and observing versus owning and wearing something of somebody else's.
For sure.
That feels a lot lighter too.
Right? Serve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do we shift all of that stuff? What can we offer to people to get them to start to look at their physical clutter, their emotional clutter, their mind clutter in a different light? Like what tools can we add to their toolbox that we give to them every single week?
I think one would just be even an inquisitive question of where am I experiencing clutter in my life? Like, where do I see it most? Where does it show up? Because I think sometimes we think it shows up in one spot, but that's just a spot we identify with most quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that as a first step, like actually sitting with the inquiry of where am I holding clutter in my life, in my heart, in my relationships, whatever. My
Yeah,
mind,
awareness.
Jesus, my mind.
Yeah, awareness is huge.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Know what you don't know until you know, and sometimes it does take somebody else pointing something out and seeing your stuff, but not owning your stuff, and that's where we can get a little snappy or bitey when someone is courageous and brave enough to stand for you, because it can be a little yucky. And so my thing is, get comfortable being in the yuck, because you're comfortable, and comfort doesn't shift something unless you're completely content in where you're at. And if that's the truth, then by golly, just keep living. But if there's some kind of discord or dis-ease, that's where you get to look at, like, it's okay to get in and feel that yuck and that chaos and the uncomfortability.
I wrote awareness one to get uncomfortable with the awkward feelings. And when you were saying content, that shows up a lot. If you just like, my contentment was so uncomfortable for me for a while, because I was so used to taking on and used to all the stuff and the clutter. So I love looking at that, like content, like a simple thing I always offer, like with hair, right? You have clients. I love change. I love when people want to change something up. But then also, sometimes people don't know what they want or don't want to change, and they're trying to talk themselves into this whole, and my offer is always, it's okay if you're content with what you have as well. Like, we don't have to search for change or, kind of relating it to chaos a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm. I was going to offer similarly to what April had to offer about being comfortable being uncomfortable, and even just from a tangible perspective in thinking about clutter in a material way, like when you have a space that's cluttered that you want to clear, the first couple items are there's that discomfort and there's that but then as you continue doing it, practicing, you you build up that muscle and your ability to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. And I feel like you just, if you allow yourself to get through the first couple items, whether they're physical items, emotional items, that then like the floodgates open and it's just like go 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 go, and no attachment to this, no attachment to that. And I just, so I would if for my tangible people, if it needs to start with the physical clutter and then apply that to the other areas of your life, and pushing through those first moments of doubt. What if I throw this out, but then I really wanted it, did I make a mistake getting rid of that? Like, it's the same conversations in the other areas of your life of clutter. So if for me, if starting with the one helps kind of set you in that mode of like, oh, this is what the inquiry could look like or feel like for me, I would offer that.
Yeah, and then action. I mean, I think that's a really important thing that we all forget. It's like, okay, well, now what? What do I do with it? Well, take that first step, you know? Take half the step to put the toe in the water. I don't know, just some kind of forward motion for you does start that momentum. And I do want to bring up the fact that we play a game with that
Yes.
mind, that mind game that we play a lot, where I call them the ladies in the attic. Um, we get to get really mindful of our thoughts and our words because they're energy. And sometimes saying the same thing over and over that's not serving us feeds that kind of energy. So being mindful about your words and your thoughts, starting to observe those, I think will bring a new light as well, for sure.
So I wrote one, awareness and inquiring like where your clutter's at. Two, get comfortable within it as much as possible, try it on, see the feelings, the awkwardness, whatever it is. Three, practice actually clearing a space, like April offered, either big or small. And then, acknowledging what came up for you, how you felt during it, what you were saying to yourself is like the hugest, right? Because a lot of times when you go there, at first you're like, I bet that like C word that can't comes in right away, just looking at everything.
I went, you said C word and my childhood humor. Like, ooh, that 4-letter C word. Never mind. No, not that one. Okay. Anybody else thinking that? No, we're good. Okay.
Chaos is the C word. No, I'm just kidding.
But I think what you're saying, Cynthia, is so important. It's the observing after the fact of like, okay, like what came up for me? What was I saying to myself? Like, because that goes back now. Okay, now you have an awareness.
And also, I see it in my marriage. That's actually when I get to that space of exploring, what came up and how I feel and what I was saying to myself. That space actually offers my most authentic self, I notice. Because then, even if it's in a conversation or something I'm trying to shift, I get to go back and say, you know what? I sat with this. I acknowledged it all. I see it now, for yourself and when you're, working therefore with anybody else.
It's peeling back the layers
Mm.
of yourself and where you're come from. Yeah. And being able to then move powerfully forward in conversations, in acknowledgments, and then in choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, that's because if you do all of those other things, but there isn't, I mean, I know we talk about attachments to outcome, but for me, like outcome is the reflection and the recall and the observation and the lesson. And I think that's one of the really important parts too. It gets to be.
Yeah. Powerful. Powerful stuff here at the Courageous in Creation Monday Live.
And I think
Yeah.
the call to action, for this week, it goes along with our Yes Vember Day 29, just cleaning a little space. And maybe the attachment, even just as simple, don't worry about how big or small it is. Don't worry if it's a drawer or a closet or a garage,
Yep,
or,
for sure.
or, whatever it is.
Did you say a person?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't like literally purge them, just symbolically. We don't. Disclaimer: we do not condone violence. Yeah.
Love it.
All right, people, go out there and live courageously. Tackle one piece of clutter in your life, whether it's a mental, physical, a person, but don't get rid of the person. Just
And as always, if you want to be a part of our courageous community, we always say, please send us a message with your email. We would love to be able to connect with you outside of a Mindset Monday and welcome you to our community.
Thank you. Thank you, all our courageous people. We love you.
Bye.